Hello and welcome to another edition of Mailbag. What is Mailbag? Well, Mailbag is a feature of the channel where you guys leave lots of comments on the channel and I attempt to answer those comments, or if I can't answer those comments, I throw it out to you guys who have more knowledge on some of this stuff than I do. So let's get into the first mailbag of this session. Remember, like, comment, subscribe to the channel. Go over to Instagram and follow me there. Go over to Facebook, follow me there. That's where the normal notices are. And consider becoming a Patreon. Next one comes from Paul Map and weird numbers. In response to the Great Keyboard Stand Challenge, Gibraltar 3-tier keyboard stand, a video I did in August 2022. This is when I built Wayne's keyboard stand, I think, yeah. Anyway, Paul writes, I've been wanting one of these for years, but can't find anyone in the UK that was prepared to design, build, cut, tailor. Just loads of drum shops with stock layouts. 3 tiers, but the top tier is a desk synth and some POS-U, but on a shelf, so basically mounting the shelf on the stand. I play seated, currently using an LM Spider with 3 tiers. Perfect height can be, it is the perfect height, but it does bounce a little. My DIY skills aren't great. I would know which bars and clamps to order, no clue how to chop them to size. Well, this is the problem, you know. Keyboard players aren't meant to be engineers, but I quite often find that if you were the keyboard player in the band, you were the technician of the band. Well, that was always my experience anyway. But when Wayne Harris approached me, he was basically in the same boat. He'd been wanting to build a Gibraltar 3-tier stand for a while, but he was a bit nervous about actually buying, cutting and tailoring the keyboard stand for himself. But what he'd come to the conclusion was that while he'd been working with various stand manufacturers over the years and had done various promotions with stand manufacturers over the years, he was never really happy. He'd had a couple of stands that had gone clomp on the floor and damaged his keyboards. So he was really looking for something that was going to take the punishment. And the other thing about Wayne is he's 6'4", right? He's a tall bugger, and he's got quite long arms. So when you're working like that, you know, not all keyboard stands are the same. They're built for somebody who is 5'8" with arms of a certain length. So if you're tall, short, fat, thin, or whatever, you know, not all keyboard stands work for you. You know, I mean, I can remember when I had a bit more of a belly on me. I mean, I'm damn sight less than I was, but when I had a bit of a belly on me, I mean, if on the top tier, I'd be leaning across the top tier and my belly would be playing the notes on the bottom tier. So, you know, you kind of have to sort of work out how do you do all this sort of stuff. Anyway, what Wayne did was he ordered all the supplies in the parts list in another video that I've got on the channel, so I'll try to remember to link to that. And that was the basics. And then we ordered some additional parts when I understood what Wayne's requirements were. So what we did was Wayne came down to the workshop and we sat down and went over his requirements, and then he ordered a bunch of stuff. Now for Wayne, you know, to trek down to the workshop, that's a day out. That's a day of his time, by the way. Just remember that, because it's, you know, it's probably an hour and a half drive either way. 2 hours on a bad day probably, to where I live on the south coast and Wayne lives in Swindon. So, you know, you've got to make time for this. So for him to come down, we went through the requirements together of what exactly he was wanting and how things would be put together. And then he had to go away. He ordered another couple of parts, and then a few weeks later came down again, and then we built the stand. So that was kind of the big thing. Mind you, it did allow me and Wayne to drink several coffees and chew the cud on the state keyboards. Now, Gibraltar have in recent months just introduced a tabletop to their keyboard stand. So I don't know whether you've seen this, but effectively what it is a top with brackets screwed into it, and effectively just sits on top. I think it's quite a good idea if you're looking for some sort of computer or monitor or something to sit on top of your keyboards. Not really sure it passes mustard if you're just looking to bang the keyboards up, pack them down at the end of the night. I don't think this is really a great idea. Anyway, that's what you need to do, is you need to find somebody locally who's capable of cutting them down. It is not difficult if you take your time. Okay, that's the one thing I put there. As long as you take your time, use some spirit levels, so you can make sure the crosses are level and the uprights are all level. The magnetic ones are brilliant for this sort of stuff. I've got several magnetic ones. You just stick them on the legs, and then you can move the legs around on either side and watch the bubbles line up. And then it should theoretically go together relatively quickly. I have to be honest and say it's not obvious. All right, so that I will say that putting a Gibraltar stand together the first time, it's not obvious. But since having done that with Wayne, I think Wayne's built another two. So once he understood how it needed to go together, it wasn't that difficult for him to put another two together. Although apparently there was lots of swearing. Next common question comes from Garamet Random Numbers in response to the Death of the Kronos video, a video that's still doing the rounds despite being recorded in December 2021. Just as an FYI, I live in the US and sadly had to bring in my Kronos for the dreaded an error has been detected message. Turns out the motherboard has something wrong with it. I've been told by several technicians that getting a replacement motherboard for the Kronos 2 in the US is nearly impossible, although I have one that is trying to procure one from Japan. We are getting to the point where the Kronos is no longer fixable, and that must be replaced by the Nautilus or something from another manufacturer. I'm already prepping myself for the bad news. Oh my god. And I think, we have to remember that these keyboards aren't as bulletproof as they used to be. Because a lot of the keyboards in days gone by were solid state. Everything was held in RAM and ROM chips, and as long as you get the battery up to date, everything kind of worked. But these modern machines are computer driven, they have a computer at the heart of them, a lot more things to go wrong, and I think one of the things about the Kronos, one of the detriment points about the Kronos in terms of its motherboard, it was based on a limited run motherboard. It wasn't based on a sort of kind of mainstream motherboard, is the way I kind of understood it when explained to me. Now I do think this is a really sad situation for Kronos 2 users to find ourselves in. Touch on wood, mine has never thrown an error, but I always thought there would be enough spares floating about in these boards to keep them going for years and years and years to come, but it looks like because of so many people having problems with the Kronos, and specifically around the boards and disk drives and RAM, a lot of this stuff seems to be they seem to be consuming the spares at a rather quicker rate of knots than I suspect the manufacturer thought. Now, as I said, touch wood, mine hasn't had a problem. It's probably because I don't gig it, I don't move it, it doesn't get knocked, and I'm just hoping that mine will keep going until Korg replace it, or replace the Nautilus range with something that is a little bit more Kronos-like. Yeah, that's how I'd put it.